Have you ever had the strange feeling that something from your past has been quietly waiting for you, while everyone around you acted as if it never existed? Today, I want you to listen carefully. Because this story begins with a father who made one silent decision many years ago, a decision so powerful that even after he was gone, it refused to disappear. He never told the world. He barely told anyone. But he left behind one clue. And that clue leads to a piece of land. Land that was never meant for anyone else. Not for your relatives. Not for your neighbors. Not even for the people who have been pretending to protect your family's legacy. It was meant for only one person. You. Now, before you think this is just another family story, stay with me. Because what happens in the next few minutes has happened in thousands of families around the world. A father works silently. He sacrifices. He skips buying things for himself. He hides money little by little. He buys something that he believes will secure his child's future. Years pass. Then one day, the father is no longer there. And suddenly, people begin changing. The same relatives who never cared suddenly become interested in family papers. Old documents disappear. Conversations become secret. People tell you. There was nothing. There wasn't any land. Your father never owned property. Forget the past. But what if those words weren't the truth? Imagine this. A father standing under the burning afternoon sun. He signs a document. His hands are rough from years of work. He doesn't smile. He simply folds the paper carefully. He whispers, "This is for my child." He doesn't announce it. He doesn't celebrate. Because some blessings grow best in silence. Years later, that same silence becomes dangerous. Because silence allows secrets to grow. And secrets attract greedy hearts. Some people don't steal with weapons. They steal with signatures. With lies. With fake concern. With statements like, "We'll handle everything. You don't need to worry. We already took care of the paperwork." Those words have destroyed more families than arguments ever have. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how quickly people become experts whenever property is mentioned? The quiet uncle suddenly knows every legal detail. The cousin who never visited suddenly remembers every family discussion. The distant relative suddenly claims they were helping. Interesting, isn't it? But here's where today's story becomes unforgettable. One evening, an old neighbor stopped someone outside their childhood home. He looked around carefully to make sure no one was listening. Then he asked, "Did your father ever tell you about the Eastern field?" The person frowned. "What field?" The old man became silent. His face changed. He realized something. "You really don't know." At that moment, years of hidden truth began unfolding. The father had once purchased a small piece of land. Not because it was expensive. Not because it was famous. But because he believed one day that place would become valuable. Everyone laughed at him. Nothing will ever happen there. It's useless. Why waste your money? He ignored them. Because fathers often see tomorrow. Long before everyone else. Years passed. Roads were built. Businesses arrived. The Forgotten Land slowly became one of the most valuable locations in the area. But by then, the father had already left this world. Only one problem remained. Someone else had started acting like the land belonged to them. Not because it was theirs, but because they believed no one would ever question them. And that is where everything changed. Because hidden truths never stay buried forever. Sometimes, a single faded notebook, an old photograph, a forgotten receipt, or one sentence spoken by an elderly neighbor, can bring decades of silence crashing down. Think about your own family for a moment. Every family has stories no one talks about. Every family has decisions that disappeared with time. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't the money people mention. It's the truth they tried to erase. Now imagine discovering that your father had written your name somewhere. Years before you ever understood what responsibility meant. He believed in your future before you believed in yourself. He planned for your tomorrow while carrying the burdens of his own today. That kind of love cannot be measured. It cannot be replaced. But sadly, it can be hidden. There are people who wait patiently. Not to help, but to benefit. They study confusion. They depend on silence. They hope you never ask questions. Because questions expose everything. One question becomes two. Two become 10. Eventually, the entire story begins falling apart. Have you ever noticed how nervous some people become when old documents are mentioned? Watch carefully. Confidence disappears. Voices change. Subjects suddenly shift. That's because truth has a strange power. It doesn't need to shout. It only needs to appear. And once it appears, nothing remains the same. Now here's something most people never think about. A father's greatest fear is rarely poverty. His greatest fear is that after he's gone, his child will be treated unfairly. That's why many fathers quietly prepare for years. Not for recognition. Not for applause. But so one day, their child won't have to start from nothing. If today's story feels strangely familiar, don't ignore that feeling. Sometimes life reminds us to value family history, to preserve memories, to understand sacrifices. Because behind every old photograph, every faded document, every forgotten conversation, there may be a story waiting to be understood. And perhaps, the greatest gift your father ever left wasn't simply a piece of land. It was the message hidden behind it. I believed in your future. No relative can take that away. No lie can erase it. No passage of time can destroy it. Because real love leaves evidence. Sometimes it's written on paper. Sometimes it's written inside the heart. And sometimes it waits patiently until the day you're finally ready to discover it. The next morning, the silence felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because once a question enters your mind, it refuses to leave. You replay every conversation, every family gathering, every strange look, every moment when someone quickly changed the subject after your father's name was mentioned. You begin asking yourself, why did no one ever explain anything? Why did certain relatives insist that everything had already been settled? And why did they always seem uncomfortable whenever old papers were brought up? At first, you tell yourself you're imagining things. But then, a memory returns. A tiny memory. One that seemed meaningless when you were a child. You remember your father returning home one evening with dust on his shoes and a folded map in his shirt pocket. He looked exhausted, yet happier than usual. When your mother asked where he had been, he smiled and quietly replied, "I've taken care of something for the future." Nothing more. No celebration. No announcement. Just those words. At the time, they meant nothing. Today, they sound completely different. The more you think about them, the clearer they become. Your father wasn't a man who spoke carelessly. Every sentence had a purpose. If he said he had taken care of the future, what exactly did he mean? Days pass. The question grows stronger. Then something unexpected happens. While cleaning an old cupboard that hadn't been opened in years, you find a small wooden box. It's worn, covered in dust. The lock no longer works. Inside are old family photographs, faded receipts, handwritten notes, and a few envelopes tied together with a thin string. Most of them seem ordinary, until one folded piece of paper catches your attention. Your father's handwriting. The moment you recognize it, everything else disappears. Your hands begin to shake. Not because you know what's inside, but because it's the first time in years you've seen his writing. You unfold the page slowly. Only a few lines remain readable. The ink has faded with time. But one sentence is still perfectly clear. If anything happens to me before I explain everything, the truth is with the old survey records. Survey records? You've never heard those words before. You search the box again. Nothing. No map. No documents. Only that mysterious sentence. Why would he write that? And why was it hidden? You begin searching through every drawer, every shelf, every old file left in the house. Hours pass. Nothing. Then, you notice something unusual. One file appears thinner than the others. Its cover is old, almost falling apart. Inside, there are only blank pages. Except, the last page has been carefully removed. Not torn. Removed. Someone intentionally took it. The realization hits hard. Someone had already searched these files before you. But who? And more importantly, what were they looking for? That night, sleep becomes impossible. You replay every family event from the past decade. Then one particular memory suddenly makes sense. Years ago, during a family gathering, one relative had insisted on taking home several of your father's old documents. At the time they had smiled and said, "I'll organize everything for you." Everyone appreciated the offer. No one questioned it. Now, that moment feels completely different. Why would someone volunteer to collect another person's paperwork? Was it kindness? Or opportunity? The following week, another surprise arrives. An elderly man visits unexpectedly. You recognize him immediately. He had known your father for decades. He sits quietly, looks around the room, then says something that freezes the air. Your father always believed one day you'd ask the right questions. Your heartbeat quickens. What do you mean? The old man smiles sadly. He knew this day would come. You lean forward. Did he ever mention land? The old man's expression changes. For several long seconds, he says nothing. Finally, he nods. Yes. Just one word. But it changes everything. He bought it long before people understood its value. You stare at him. Where is it? I don't know exactly. What do you mean? I knew he bought it, but he never revealed the final papers to anyone. Why? Because he trusted very few people. The room falls silent. Then the old man adds something even more unsettling. He once told me that if anyone ever tried to claim it after he was gone, the truth wouldn't be found through arguments. It would be found through records. Records. Again. The same word. Now you know the note wasn't random. Your father was leaving directions. Not answers. Directions. Someone wanted those directions to disappear. The old man slowly stands. Before leaving, he looks back one final time. There are people who hope you never finish what your father started. And there are people who are terrified that you will. The door closes. You remain standing in complete silence. Outside, the world continues as if nothing has happened. Cars pass. Children laugh. Neighbors carry on with their lives. But inside your mind, everything has changed. This is no longer about a rumor. No longer about family gossip. This is about uncovering the truth your father believed was worth protecting. A truth hidden so carefully that even years later, someone may still be trying to keep it buried. And somewhere, perhaps in an old record book, perhaps in a forgotten survey map, or perhaps in a place no one has searched in decades, the next piece of the story is waiting. The question is, who will find it first? The next 3 days pass without answers. But something feels different. It's almost as if the truth knows you're getting closer. Small details that once seemed meaningless now begin connecting like pieces of a forgotten puzzle. A faded photograph. An old receipt. A phone number written on the back of an envelope. A date circled in red. None of them make sense alone. Together, they point somewhere. Late one afternoon, while looking through another stack of family belongings, you discover an old diary. Not your father's. Your mother's. Most of the pages contain ordinary notes. Shopping lists. Family expenses. Birthdays. Then, one page stops you cold. Written in the margin are only 6 words. Don't forget the southern boundary stones. Boundary stones? You whisper the words to yourself again. Why would your mother write that? She wasn't someone who recorded random thoughts. Every note had a purpose. You continue reading. The following page has been torn out. Another missing page. Another missing piece. At that moment, a chilling thought crosses your mind. What if someone had been removing pages little by little over the years? Not everything. Only the important parts. Only the pages that could reveal something. You close the diary. For the first time. This no longer feels like coincidence. That evening, you visit an elderly neighbor who had lived beside your family longer than anyone else. His eyesight is weak. His voice is soft. But his memory is astonishing. The moment your father's name is mentioned, his face lights up. He was one of the most careful men I ever knew. You ask quietly, did he ever speak about land? The old man laughs. Speak? Never. He guarded that secret like treasure. Your heart races. So you knew? I knew enough to know there was something important. But he trusted almost no one with the details. You lean closer. Did he ever leave any clue? The old man closes his eyes. Thinking. Then, very slowly, he says something unexpected. Your father used to visit the same place every year. The same day. The same hour. Without fail. What place? I never asked. But he always carried a rolled-up paper. A map? Perhaps. And every time he returned, he looked relieved. The words echo inside your mind. A yearly visit. Always the same day. Why? Was he checking on the land? Making sure it remained untouched? Or was there another reason entirely? Before leaving, the old man stops you. Wait. He walks inside. Several minutes pass. Finally, he returns holding a tiny rusted key. I found this years ago near your father's toolbox. I always meant to return it. I forgot. You stare at the key. It isn't large. It isn't fancy. But something about it feels important. There is one small number engraved into the metal. 17. Nothing else. No name. No label. Just 17. What does it open? A drawer? A locker? A box? Or something much bigger? That night, you examine every cupboard, every cabinet, every old chest inside the house. Nothing fits. Hours later. Frustrated. You place the key on the table. As you do, your eyes fall upon an old framed photograph hanging on the wall. Behind your father, barely visible, is a weathered wooden structure. You had seen this picture hundreds of times, yet never noticed it. The structure looks familiar. Where have you seen it before? You remove the photograph from the wall. On the back, someone has written a single sentence. One day you'll understand. No signature. No date. Just those words. Your heartbeat grows louder. Could your father have written them? Or someone else? The following morning, you decide to revisit a place from your childhood. An abandoned storage shed at the edge of the old family property. No one has entered it for years. The wooden door barely opens. Dust fills the air. Broken tools lie scattered everywhere. Cobwebs cover every corner. Nothing appears unusual. Until you notice an old metal cabinet standing against the far wall. Its lock is badly rusted. Without thinking, you reach into your pocket. The small key. Number 17. You slide it into the lock. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a quiet click. The cabinet opens. Inside, there are no jewels. No cash. No title deeds. Only a weathered leather folder. Your hands tremble as you lift it. Inside the folder are several folded maps. Each marked with handwritten circles. Coordinates. Measurements. Boundary lines. One map has a sentence written across the bottom. If this reaches you, trust records, not voices. You stare at the handwriting. There is no doubt. It is your father's. Suddenly, footsteps. Outside the shed. Someone is there. They stop. Silence. Then, the sound of the door handle moving very slowly. Someone knows you are inside. And whoever it is may already know what you've just found. The door handle stops moving. For several long seconds, nothing happens. The silence becomes almost unbearable. You hold your breath. The leather folder is still in your hands. Instinct tells you not to make a sound. Then, a knock. Slow. Deliberate. Not the knock of a stranger. The knock of someone who believes they have every right to be there. You don't answer. Another knock. Louder this time. Finally, a familiar voice comes through the old wooden door. I know you're inside. Your heart skips. It's a relative. Someone who had always insisted there was nothing left from your father's estate. Someone who had repeatedly told you, forget the past. Now, they are standing outside the very shed your father had quietly protected for years. How did they know you were here? You carefully close the leather folder. Your mind races. If they see these maps, Everything changes. The voice outside speaks again. I've been looking for you. Not. I was passing by. Not. I happened to be nearby. I've been looking for you. The words reveal far more than the speaker intended. You quietly slide the folder beneath an old wooden crate. Just as you do, the door slowly opens. Your relative steps inside. Their eyes don't look at you first. They scan the room. Every shelf. Every cabinet. Every corner. As if searching for something. Only then do they smile. There you are. The smile feels forced. Too perfect. Too rehearsed. You answer calmly. I was just looking around. For what? Old memories. The relative nods. But you notice something. Their hands. Slightly trembling. People who know they're telling the truth rarely hide nervous hands. After a few moments they casually ask. You didn't find anything important. Did you? There it is. The question they came to ask. Not how you were. Not why you were here. Only whether you had found something. You shake your head. Nothing. The relative seems relieved. Too relieved. After another minute of awkward conversation, they leave. But before walking away, they glance one last time toward the metal cabinet. Only for a second. Yet that second tells you everything. They knew about it. The moment they disappear from sight, you lock the shed again. Return to the hidden folder. And finally begin examining every page. One map shows the outline of several fields. Another contains measurements. One includes handwritten landmarks that no longer exist. An old well. A banyan tree. A stone bridge. Then, you notice something extraordinary. Every map has one tiny symbol drawn in the corner. A small circle. Inside another circle. At first it seems decorative. Until you discover the exact same symbol stamped onto the back of one faded receipt found earlier in your father's box. It wasn't decoration. It was a mark. A personal code. Your father had been connecting documents without using words. Brilliant. No one searching casually would ever notice. You continue reading. Inside the folder is a folded letter. Not addressed to anyone. Simply titled. If the papers disappear. Your pulse quickens. You unfold it carefully. The letter reads. If these maps are ever separated from the official records, remember this. Paper can be hidden. Truth leaves footprints. The land can always be identified by its original survey boundaries. Never trust copies. Always begin with the oldest record. You stop reading. Your father wasn't writing out of fear. He was writing with preparation. Almost as though he expected someone to interfere. Who? Why? How long had he known? Then, one final sheet falls from the folder. It isn't a map. It's a hand-drawn family tree. Every branch is labeled. Except one. Your name. Next to it. A tiny handwritten sentence. The final responsibility. Not. The final owner. Not. The beneficiary. The final responsibility. Those words change everything. Perhaps this was never about wealth. Perhaps your father wasn't trying to leave you riches. Perhaps he wanted to leave you something even more valuable. Integrity. The responsibility to protect what generations had worked for. As sunset approaches, you carefully place every document back into the folder. But before leaving, you decide to inspect the cabinet one last time. Running your fingers along the bottom shelf, you hear a hollow sound. Different from the rest. You tap again. Definitely hollow. There has to be another compartment. After several minutes of searching, you discover a tiny wooden latch hidden beneath years of dust. You pull it gently. A secret compartment slides open. Inside, only one item. A sealed envelope. Across the front, in your father's unmistakable handwriting, are 7 words that send a chill through your entire body. Open only after you know who lied. You stare at the envelope. Your hands freeze. Because for the first time, you realize something terrifying. Your father never doubted that someone would lie. He already knew. Someone would. He simply believed that one day, you would discover exactly who.